All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakah Quadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. This video will be a part 1 lesson, landbacking off a very informative video that I saw going into the truth about the Moors in Europe, okay? And how they were warring against the Edomites back then, who they called Wildman, right? And you had the so-called black nobles or black nobility, Jake that was ruling Europe, Germany, Spain, Russia for 1,000 years, which was known as the Dark Ages according to prophecy, okay? So Lord's will, I can add more parts to the series because both of the videos are like 2 hours long, all right? So I wanted to watch both videos through and dissect the information and present it in a lesson, all right? So Lord willing, we can get to that down the line. So with that being said, let's get into it here. It says 1400s German tapestry. Wildmen, all right? These are the Edomites. Black noble, this is Jake, all right? This is during the Dark Ages. Okay, let's look up this word tapestry.
Tapestry.
It says a heavy cloth woven with rich, often vari-colored designs or scenes, usually hung on walls for decoration and sometimes used to cover furniture. It says a cloth embroidered with designs or scenes, especially one made in the Middle Ages, okay, the Dark Ages. Now check this out.
These giants are the wild men of Europe. The Wild Men and Moors tapestry from 1440, now housed in the Historisches Museum in Basel, suggests an alternative narrative for the foundations of medieval Europe. In spite of their existence being now widely discarded as folklore, the consistent historical depictions of wild men, also known as woodwoes, do raise questions about an untold hidden chapter in human history. The popularity of woodwoes imagery extended beyond tapestries. They appear on coats of arms, such as those of the Wild family in England and the municipality of Wolfstein in Germany. In liturgical books, such as the Luttrell Psalter, they are carved into churches and cathedrals, like the ones adorning the Magdalen College in Oxford, dating from the late 15th century. They even appear in the 1530 genealogy of the royal houses of Spain and Portugal, which coincide.
The wild man, all right, that's him, the Edomite, okay? This is from Wikipedia. It says the wild man. German Wilderman, der Wildman, or Wild Men of the Woods, is a mythical figure and motif resembling a hairy human that appears in the art and literature of medieval Europe, all right, the Dark Ages, right? Generally, they are considered a large statured race of humans who are hairy all over their body, okay? Who does that sound like? Generally, they are considered a large statured race of humans who are hairy all over their body and live in the wilderness or woodlands. They are often thought to be covered with moss or wear green or vegetative clothing and iconically wield a club or hold an uprooted tree as a staff. They also occur in female versions as wild women, all right? So it said that they got hair all over their body and they live in the wilderness or woodlands, all right? And what did the scripture say about Esau? All right, he was a man of the field, right? This is Genesis 25. And we'll start at 21 and read down to the point. All right, Genesis 25 and 21, it says, and Isaac entreated the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Washai, for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Washai, was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. Verse 22, and the children struggled together within her. All right, this is dealing with Esau and Jacob in Rebekah's womb. Okay? And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Washai. All right, well, she went to inquire of a prophet of the Lord. Verse 23, and the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Washai, said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb. 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. All right, so these are 2 different nations of people, man. Okay? It says, and shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people. All right, Jacob would be stronger than Esau, right? And one people shall be stronger than another people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment. They called his name Esau, right? So Esau was born red and hairy. Okay? Hairy all over like a hairy garment. Okay? Remember, we're dealing with the wild man. Okay? What did it say again? Let's go back to the Wikipedia. It said that they were generally they are considered a large stature race of humans who are hairy all over their body and live in the wilderness or woodlands, right? Again, Genesis 25 and 25. And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them, right? Verse 27, the point. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. And Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. So it says that Esau was a hunter and a man of the field. Let's pull this up. I got this pulled up in the chat GPT, right? So I put in and said Esau was a man of the field. What does that mean? All right, this is what we got, right? From Genesis 25 and verse 27. All right, a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. All right, it says what man of the field means. Number one, a hunter, outdoorsman. Esau lived outside in open land rather than settled areas. He was skilled in hunting and survival, basically someone who lived off the land. Again, okay, they lived in the wilderness or woodlands, all right, the wild man. This is him, right? Number two, rough physical lifestyle. It points to a rugged, hands-on way of life, strong, active, and connected to nature rather than domestic or spiritual pursuits, right? Because Esau was he's a carnal man. All right, he lives off the flesh. It says symbolic contrast with Jacob. This verse is also showing a deeper contrast. Esau, physical, impulsive, worldly. See? Carnal. Okay? Esau, physical, impulsive, worldly. Jacob, quiet, thoughtful, dwelling in tents, often associated with study, order, or spiritual focus. Number 4, independent, not settled. Field, quote unquote, can also imply someone not rooted in structured community life, more wild, self-directed, and driven by immediate needs, right? He's driven by the flesh, all right? Carnality, all right? More wild, self-directed, and driven by immediate needs. Deeper biblical idea. In scripture, quote, the field can sometimes represent the world, see Matthew 13 and 38. So Esau's identity can hint at someone more tied to worldly or fleshly things rather than covenant promises, right? In simple terms, a quote, man of the field equals a rugged hunter who lives outside. Okay, this is them, man. No way around that. A rugged hunter who lives outside, focused on physical life rather than spiritual discipline. You see that? So that's him. Okay? Okay, the wild man. Okay, here's some more. Because, I was looking up some stuff when I had came across the, this image in the video that we just played here. Okay, dealing with the wild man. That's why I said, Lord willing, I can go into some more, videos and make a series. Okay, dealing with the truth about the Moors in Europe and the wild man, the Edomites. And this is who was Jake. Jake was warring with these devils back then. Okay, the so-called black nobility, the black nobles, the Moors, they were warring with Esau back then in the Dark Ages, the wild man. Right? Here's some more here. Let's pull this up. This is from Grunkopedia.com, okay? And it says this was fact checked by Grunk 3 months ago, all right? So, we're not just pulling shit out our ass, man, okay? Anyway, Wildman says the Wildman, also known as Woodwose or Woodwose in medieval context, is a recurring mythical figure in folklore and literature across cultures, typically depicted as a hairy, primitive, and often naked humanoid inhabiting remote forests or mountains, symbolizing the liminal boundary between civilization and untamed nature. All right, this is them, man. In the irony, right, how they try to call Jake monkeys and savages and all of that. This is him. Okay, like they say, he's just projecting his characteristics on Jake. Okay, he's the wild man. He's the Neanderthal, the caveman. Okay, this is who Jake was warring with during the Dark Ages, man. As we saw on the what's it called, the tapestry. Okay, they were warring with Jake back then. Let me go to that image. All right. See, these are the Edomites. It's a bigger image. I wish I could pull it up. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, bear with me 1 second. All right, here we go right here. Here's a bigger image right here. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. So you see at the bottom here, all right, Lord willing, it's a little clear. Right, but at the bottom here, you see the wild man, the Edomites, all right, and you got Jake, okay, the Moors, the black nobility, they're defending a castle against these Edomites, all right? They got the arrows, they're shooting at them, right? They're coming to invade the land. Again, this is who they was warring against, okay? So that war between Esau and Jacob has been going on for millennium, man, okay? Same thing today, right? Let me go back to what we was reading here. Okay, so again, the wild man, also known as Woodwose or Woodwose in medieval context, is a reoccurring mythical figure in folklore and literature across cultures, typically depicted as a hairy, primitive, and often naked humanoid inhabiting remote forests or mountains. All right, Esau is a man of the field, symbolizing a liminal boundary between civilization and untamed nature. This archetype embodies perpetual aggressiveness, uncontrollable instincts, and a raw, uncivilized existence, right? Because Jake had to civilize these people, man, back then. Okay, they would wear their clothes until it disintegrated off their ass, man. They wouldn't bathe. All right, they ate raw meat, drank blood. All right, it says perpetual aggressiveness, uncontrollable instincts, and a raw, uncivilized existence, often portrayed as a cannibalistic or sexually deviant predator akin to monsters, races, or the Freudian ID. You see that? This is them. And what's being exposed on these people now? The cannibalism, right? The rituals that they do, all right? Drinking blood, the trafficking of children, the unaliving of kids. All right, sexually deviant behavior. All right, sodomy, PDF files. Okay, bestiality. Okay, this is his nature. This is his spirit. He is the wild man. This is him. He can't get away from that. Okay, let's jump down a little bit. Let's see what else we can get out of here. And this is the real deal because it has the reference points at the bottom. Right, I was looking at this the other day. Let me just show you. Right here at the bottom, they got all the references. All right, so all this information is all your so-called scholarly information here. All right, but anyway, we're not going to read all of that. I just want to read a little bit more, and we'll get back to the scriptures. Right, where were we at? So here, second paragraph, it says the wild man's origins trace back to ancient Near Eastern traditions, with the earliest attested example being Enkidu in the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, 2100 to 1200 BCE, a hairy, beast-like figure created by the gods who lives among animals until civilized by Cartesian Shemhat, representing the transition from savagery to society, right? Mesopotamian iconography and text classify wild men into categories such as the hairy man, like Enkidu, the savage, a violent outsider, in the demonized form with animal features influencing later biblical references such as Esau, described as a hairy man in Genesis 25 and 25, which we just read. And this is the spirit. Okay. Is there anything else I want to take from this? All right. But he is the wild man. All right. Yeah, that's the point. So maybe we'll come back to that in a future video. All right, in this series here. But anyway, moving on. Okay. Can't get around it. So like I said, I was just doing research and I was just finding pictures that was linking up with this topic and this information that we see here. All right, here's some more. It says wood woes, a wild man of the woods, a savage, a satyr. Okay. The Edomite, bro. It says hairy one mentioned in Greek mythology as a creature composed of a man and a goat, right? Supposed to inhabit wild and desolate regions, right? And it's heavy too, because Esau is regarded as the goat in the scriptures, man. And who's his god? Okay, the goat, the Baphomet. You know, just thinking out loud. It says the Hebrew word is rendered also goat, Leviticus 4:24, and the devil, i.e. an idol, in the form of a goat. You see that? As I just said. Who's the idol? Who's the god that they worship? Baphomet. Okay. Is that not in the form of a goat? The goat head, you know? And it would like half goat, half human body, you know? It says 17 and 7, 2 Chronicles 11 and 15. When it is said Isaiah 13:21 compared to Isaiah 34 and 14, the satyr shall dance there. The meaning is that the place referred to shall become desolate waste. Right, yeah, because, let me get that real quick, because Babylon, America, is going to be made desolate, all right? It mentioned Isaiah, was it 13? Let me go back. Isaiah 13:21, right? Isaiah 13:21, and it reads, it says, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and an owl shall dwell there, and satyr shall dance there, and the wild beasts of the island shall cry in the desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces, and her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. All right, so this is the future destruction of Babylon. America is going to be wasted through nuclear fire. Okay, verse 22 NLT, hyenas will howl in its fortresses, and jackals will make dens in its luxurious palaces. Babylon's days are numbered. Its time of destruction will soon arrive. That's heavy. What was the other one? Isaiah 34:14. Let's pull that up too. Isaiah 34 and 14. Okay, this is Isaiah 34 and 14. And it reads, I started 13. It says, and the thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles, and the fortresses thereof, and it shall be an habitation of dragons in a court for owls. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl shall also rest there and find her place for herself a place of rest. It says, there shall a great owl make her nest, and lay and hatch and gather under her shadow, and there shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. So this is dealing with the post destruction of Babylon the Great, America, man. There's going to be a desolation, a ruin. Okay, a desert land, man. So that's the future for Esau's habitation. You know, right? Here's some more. I was just, like I said, I found some more images. Okay, we just read that part. Okay. It says, this is where the wild men, Slavs or woodwolves live. The Oxford Dictionary describes the woodwolves as a term going back to the 11th century. A wild man of the woods, a savage, a satyr, a faun. Satyr, hairy one, mentioned in Greek mythology as a creature composed of a man and a goat, supposed to inhabit wild or desolate regions, right? As we just read. Let's go down. It says civilized people, i.e. the so-called black ruling class nobility, regarded wild men, Slavs, as beings of the wilderness, the antithesis of civilization. All right, this is him. The wild man, the Edomite, the savage, okay, the Neanderthal, the caveman, okay? You see how Esau is getting exposed, man? He can't hide himself. Jeremiah 49, okay, and 10. Jeremiah 49 and 10, but I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, man. All right, all the information regarding his origins, who he is, okay? And he should not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. He is the wild man. He is the savage, okay? The Edomite, okay? The hairy man, as we read in the Grunkpedia, okay? They were known to embody perpetual aggressiveness, uncontrollable instincts, in a raw, uncivilized existence, often portrayed as cannibalistic or sexually deviant. Predator akin to monstrous races or the fraudulent ID. All right, this is this man. Okay, this is a video I wanted to play, but I'm not gonna risk it. But there was a video of an Edomite somewhere in Florida, and he was eating a shark right out the ocean. He caught the shark, he picked it up out of the water and started biting into it. There was blood all over the place, right? And there was another one, same guy. He killed a dead raccoon and started eating it with the fur on it and everything. Just ripping the fur and flesh apart, blood all over his mouth. I had the video queued up, but I'm not going to play it for YouTube purposes, man. But this is the wild man, is the point we making. All right? Anyway. Job chapter 30, and we'll start at, we'll just read at the top. The point is 1 through about 9 or 8. All right? This is Job 30. And 1, and it reads, it says, but now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have not disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. You see that? So we know how these Edomites move when it comes to animals. All right, the things that they push. Look at America now. Look at all the degeneracy and detestable acts that are pushed in this land now. Okay? It says, verse 2, yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in the former time, desolate and waste. All right? Because, back then, all right, during the dark ages, you had Jake, he drove Esau into those mountains, man. Into them caves, right? Verse 4, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat, right? They were like animals prowling in the bushes, as we saw in the image here, right? Let me go back. Where is it at? Right? This is how they was, crawling around on all fours like animals, right? Who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. Verse 5, they were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as a thief, right? They were driven into them mountains, man, into them caves. Okay? Verse 6, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys and caves of the earth and the rocks. NLT. So now they live in frightening ravines in caves among the rocks. The Edomites, man. Obadiah. Right? What was it? Obadiah. Let me get that real quick. I'll make that example. Okay. This is Obadiah 1 and 3. The pride of thy heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? All right, let's get this word for rock, just to make the point. Salah, crag, cliff, rock. The point in the lexicon here. Let's pull that up. Okay, it says Salah, Petra, the chief city of the Edomites, situated between the Dead Sea and the Atlantic Gulf, in a valley surrounded with lofty rocks, so that a very great part of the abodes were excavated in the rock. All right, that's how they lived. All right, Mount Seir, the caves. All right, again, he is, as we saw early on, he is the Neanderthal, right? Wild men of Europe. Ain't no getting around it, man. Right? Back in Job 30 and 6, to dwell in the clefts of the valleys and caves of the earth and in the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. Yeah, they were like animals, right? NLT. They sound like animals howling among the bushes, huddled together beneath the nettles. Right? This is how they was moving, man. You see? The Neanderthal, the caveman, the Edomite. It says verse 8, they were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth, right? As we read in the Grunkpedia, dealing with their characteristics, right? They were viler than the earth, uncontrollable instincts, aggressiveness, perpetual aggressiveness, raw, uncivilized existence, all right? Cannibalistic and sexually deviant. Okay? This is him, man. All of his laws, his policies, all right? They're all deviant, man. An abomination, all right? The different things that he pushed, the different wines and philosophies that Esau pushes in America across the world. It's all anti-Messiah, anti-Bible. Okay? This is that wild man. You know? Is there any more? All right? They are nameless fools. NLT, Job 30 and 8. They are nameless fools, outcasts from society. Yeah, this is them, man. Right? So that's pretty much the point. You know, I just wanted to, just to, add on to that. Like I said, it's just part one of the video. It's a little bit more. As Jake goes into it pretty good. Like I said, it's 2 hour. Both videos are about 2 hours long. So I'm going to take my time and, check them out. And then, Lord willing, I can add some more to the point here, man. But again, this is the wild man. The Edomite. Esau, Edom. All right. The hairy wild man. All right. That the man of the field is we're just reading about. You see? But anyway, hey, shalom to the next one. Shalom.